joined today by Liz Ritchie, Sika Green, Zach Ward, Sierra Taylor, and Cedric Jones. This past week, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta signed an order, not an executive order, but an order allowing women in combat roles. Many people believe that this is one of the most important signatures or events that have happened since 1948 when President Harry Truman integrated the United States military. Now, to begin, I would wonder, is this a good move? Just personally, I know that I have a 3-year-old daughter. I would not necessarily want her to ever serve in combat. I mean, I don't have a problem if she goes to the military. I mean, her grandfather, my dad was in the military, but that's as a JAG officer doing law or medical doctor or a nurse or something other than carrying an M16 and getting shot at.
So sexy.
Well, it's just a not sexy. It's just a
yes,
daddy.
it is
I'm just
sexy.
Being a daddy.
Yes. As a daddy, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say I don't want my child to serve in combat. I think that goes for whether your child is a girl or boy. But to say that I want her to be a nurse or that's sexist, Chuck.
I said doctor first. I did
Okay,
say
doctor.
first.
Sorry.
Okay, right,
it's still
right.
sexist.
And I actually said lawyer even before then.
Okay, you did. So, you know, in your footsteps. But the bottom line is, if you want to equate it to gun control, the gun control people say you have the right to bear arms. So you have the right as a woman to serve on the lines of combat if you want to. Now, will the Sikhster do it? Absolutely not. That's not my thing. That's not my thing. But if my daughters decide that they want to go into the military, they want to make that a career, they want to go on the front lines, yes, I would be jumping up and screaming, but I'd do it if it was Trey too. So, but they have the ability and the equality to do that.
I think this argument that it's a distraction, that having men and women serving together is bogus, basically. If that were the case, then we shouldn't have repeal, don't ask, don't tell, where you're going to have gay men serving with gay men in combat. I think that's just a false argument.
Well, you know, one of the things that I find interesting is that, you know, I didn't serve in the military, but I had several cousins who served in the first Gulf War back in 1991. And I recall that of shock to me was when they got home that summer, that they were talking about the fact that that was one of the first major deployments where there were a number of women who, they weren't in direct combat roles, but more so than even in Vietnam, you had them driving supply trucks. They were pretty much right there with them. Yeah. And they discussed the amount of sex that was going on, like during the whole buildup. Remember, we went into Kuwait in August of 1990. Desert Storm didn't start until January. And I was just really shocked to hear that one of the biggest pastimes was lots of sex going on. And I was thinking to myself, like, you remember when we played football when you're younger, coaches used to always say you don't need to be doing that. You got your mind focused on game, but keep your legs strong. And so in my mind, you're almost wondering, does that same concept work with...
I think it's a
That's why I played
Keep your legs. Sorry.
I think it's a false positive though.
Right.
Because that kind of behavior, that's going to go on whether it's all men.
It's a lot of sex going on anyway.
Yeah, I think it's all going on anyway.
They're 18 to 22-year-old college-age people.
Yeah.
That kind of happens.
Yeah.
But obviously we've had a lot of stories lately that there's sexual misconduct in the military. Integrating the frontline units is just going to make, there's going to be more of that naturally, not less of it probably. But that's a problem we have in all segments of society, so separating it from the military is sort of unrealistic. All this changes is there's certain, they call them MOSs, military occupational specialties, that women have not been able to go into. Basically infantry, most artillery units, most armor units. All that changes is women, I guess, will now elect to go into those MOSs. One of the rules that they said was they're not going to change any of the physical standards. I would imagine that the Delta teams, the SEAL teams, those probably are going to stay all men for the time being. So in the deployments and the combat actions we're having right now in Iraq and Afghanistan, this is not going to change very much because there is no front line. This isn't World War I or World War II with a front line. I mean, they're attacking these fire bases, they're attacking these air bases. You know, women have been involved in combat in these wars. So the current kind of wars we're fighting, it's not going to change a lot. That may be different later, the different, 5, 10 years from now, different enemy, different war. But this is probably an inevitable step. I don't think it's going to be the end of the military or the end of the world. I think, a lot of people, frankly, I don't know how many women are going to want to do this.
Understood. Now, Sarah, you've done a lot of work with women's rights issues. What are your thoughts?
I think that now, more so than ever, we do need to focus on the safety of our women inside of our military in terms of the sexual abuse that you brought up, because it's a problem and it's not something that's, very well talked about. It's not something that's handled properly. And now that we're, taking it even we're bringing women even further in. I feel like that's something that definitely needs to be addressed.
I think it sounds like sort of a positive kumbaya club here on this, but there are some real practical negatives to this. One of them is this is going to cost a lot of money because facilities for infantry units are all men, unless we want them showering together and using just basic stuff like that I don't even
We
think
said
they've
that
thought
about
of.
integrating schools though.
This is true. This
I
is
know,
very
but I
true.
don't think they've thought through just the practical physical plant things that are going to have to change. That's all very expensive, especially now with sequestration. The military's in the chopping block. There was an article today that a lot of bases aren't serving breakfast anymore.
Wow.
So at a time when we're withdrawing a lot of resources from the military, we're asking them to add stuff that doesn't really increase their combat capability, like building an extra set of bathrooms in every building and every base. Just stuff like that I don't think they thought of.
Well,
And it was nice of Leon Panetta to wrap some stuff in a paper bag, light it on fire, leave it on the door and say, I quit. So,
I think anytime you do something different that's not been the norm, there's going to be an adjustment period, and there's going to be finances that have to be put into it. But I think what I think about is what maybe it will do to help waylay sexual harassment, because I think women are viewed as sexual objects. It'll be interesting to see when we are viewed as machines, fighting machines, combat machines.
Colonial.
It will be
machines,
interesting to
unfortunately.
see how that dynamic plays out.
And with that, Sika, I absolutely do agree, and I look forward to the day where more women have distinguished themselves in a way that will mean more respect ultimately for women, because I do believe that women can do generally most anything that men can do. Sometimes from a strength standpoint it's a little bit different, but not from a mental strength or a courage standpoint. With that, we thank you for listening in.